If you like this video, please click on the like button. Comment with the names of the movies you would like us to cover next. Click the subscribe button and press the bell icon to get notified of our latest creations. We cover 100 movies from around the world every day. To advertise with our channel, reach out to us. Our contact information is on our channel page. Now, let's move to the plot of this movie.
Theresa provides her terminally ill mother a cannabis joint laced with poison, allowing her to commit assisted suicide. After her mother's death, she inherits her home in rural Northern California. Theresa's boyfriend, Nick, wants her to move elsewhere with him, but she insists on staying in her mother's house. Theresa returns to her job at a cannabis dispensary owned by her friend Keith, but is noticeably withdrawn. She attends a house party with Keith and talks with Johnny, a mutual friend who is younger than both of them. Quote, "One day while Theresa is working, a sick elderly man, Ed, comes into the shop to pick up the same poison-laced cannabis Theresa administered to her mother. Theresa gives him the cannabis and he leaves, aware that he is using it to commit suicide. Theresa experiences an emotional breakdown. Ed returns later in the evening, informing Theresa and Keith that the drug failed to work. In the middle of the night, Theresa receives a phone call from Keith. She meets him at a car wash, where he tells her that Johnny has died, and accuses her of accidentally selling Johnny the poison-laced cannabis intended for Ed. Single quote. Her grief now compounded by guilt. Theresa's emotional state becomes increasingly fragile, and she begins retreating to the surrounding woods for hours at a time, causing strain on her relationship with Nick. Contemplating suicide, she prepares 5 individual joints laced with the poison, but at first cannot bring herself to smoke them. Later that night, she goes into the woods and works up the nerve to smoke one of the joints, but it does not kill her. She awakens the next morning with scratches on her legs. She smokes a second joint in the morning, and has visions of herself walking through the wilderness. Later, she smokes the third joint, which induces powerful hallucinations, but does not kill her. When she returns to consciousness, she finds that she has dismantled a wooden fence outside the house, but has no recollection of doing so. Later that night, Theresa meets with Keith at a local bar, and smokes a 4th joint. After, she drives to Ed's house and confesses to him how she inadvertently killed Johnny. After telling him the news, Ed dies in front of her. Upon returning home, she gets into a fight with Nick when she refuses to tell him where she has been. She eventually leaves and walks to Keith's house, visibly ill and vomiting. Keith, who perceives Theresa's guilt over the deaths of her mother and Johnny, suggests she confide in Nick. Theresa refutes the idea, and Keith threatens to call Nick on the phone. Theresa begins burning her fingertips on a hot clothes iron that Keith has left on. When he attempts to stop her, she attacks him, burning his face with the iron, and then beats him over the head with it numerous times, killing him. Quote, "Covered in blood, Theresa wanders into the woods and smokes the last of the poison-laced joints. This induces numerous visions of the landscape, during which Theresa begins levitating and ascends into the tree canopy." Single quote.